Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds trying to find the secrets of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. We reread the entirety of its story from Book 1 to Book 16 billion. Today we are joined by DragonKeiran.
Woohoo! Back again.
Swiggity Swoo.
A man was defined not by his flaws, but by how he overcame them.
John. I didn't hear John's. Sorry. Kay.
Hey.
And I'm ReaderWarrior, and today we're going to be talking about chapters 18 to 22 of Mistborn, The Well of Ascension, Part 2, Ghosts in the Mist. And we're just going to jump on straight into it. We've got Dragon with chapter 18.
Beautiful. Introduction of Zane, point of view. Super excited for this chapter. I know a lot of people throw shade on Zane, honestly, but and I have some other external reasons why I like Zane so much, but I just feel like honestly I love just the difference and just kind of some of the novelty that comes with him. But a little bit on the for the recap side of things is we see Zane. He hangs out. He's hanging outside of Venture, staring at. We find out his half brother. So one of the first things we find out is he's like staring in, thinking about how his brother basically got all of this, glorious glamour and lifestyle and stuff, and he had to always hide in the shadows. But he admits later, it's like, it was worth it. I probably wouldn't be as strong as I am if I didn't grow up being hidden and having to scrounge for food in my own house and no one knowing that I existed. And then shortly after that, we quickly find out he is insane and hears voices in his head that tell him to kill people, and he thinks that voice is God.
Yeah, he wasn't kidding earlier when he told Vin he was insane.
Yeah, he's like, I'm insane. She's like, you're not insane. You're totally lucid. And then he's like, everyone he sees, kill him. He's not important. You don't need to stab him.
He's just a side character.
He's just a side. You don't ever see that soldier again. Might as well stab him right now. I don't know. And I aspect of about someone that has they're very lucid and they understand their insanity, but there's just an aspect of it that they can mostly control, and it's just I don't know, something about that. Just I really like that aspect of just this slightly unhinged, uncontrollable, but very in control character. I honestly, so I really loved that. He, we find out, he talks with Straff a little bit about he goes and tries to make Straff come into him, but Straff basically pulls the whole hey, I'm more powerful than you, so you got to come see me. Sitting with my, with my mistress and just chilling. Which of course he only brought a couple of his mistresses, something 13 to 15 or something like that. 10 to 15, I believe, is the words he used. So just a couple, which I think also gives perspective on the way Straff says that is you think, oh yes, he's got a couple mistresses, and then you're like, yeah, he got a few. 15 is a few to what?
Yeah, I personally thought that was a little cheesy. Really, he brings 15, and then she comes in there, and the whole thing where it's oh, at least she's hopeful. I don't know, that was a little bit weird, and I thought that was a little cheesy. I don't know, what did you guys think about that whole scene?
The 15 comment was a little cheesy, I agree, but I think from what we see of Straff, yeah, he is the type of guy to be like that.
Right. I just think I don't know, it gives you a good feel for what is this kind of the debauchery they used to. Because you say 15, I'm thinking of his view, be there are people out there. Oh yeah, they dropped 1,000 people, no big deal to them. So for someone like that to hey, he's got basically probably a whole castle full, manor full of, you know, people that he can house, that he wants to like sleep around with. Like that's just like his level of like uncare and just like power. So maybe a little on the cheesy side, but I think it really gives like a feel of like who is Straff and just like what's his mentality about this. And maybe he only has 20, who knows? But like in his mind, that's
It's fitting with his character.
15's a handful.
yeah.
Sorry.
I was gonna say it's fitting with his character.
It couldn't be 16 because that's a number of significance.
Exactly.
It's an anime.
Well,
hero.
maybe she's the 16th.
This whole time, Straff was the protagonist.
Yeah. So I just think this chapter is just very, very great introduction. Also, it is the other idea that Elend and Zane are the most important of Straff's children, which means that there are others out there. Which is an interesting implication of, hey, are we going to see any of them later? Like, is this going to become like a, you know, big power struggle, like with like a bunch of like his kids fighting over stuff, or you know what's going to happen?
Ellen's sister.
It's especially interesting because like Ellen's always thought that he was an only child. Like he doesn't know that.
Good point.
That there are these other like that he has half siblings out there. He's always grown up as an only child, which is also interesting.
Right, and to know that there's multiples of siblings out there hidden from view.
And or dead. Because if any of them had a Ska mother...
I was gonna ask that, like, are we to assume that they're with Ska women?
Not necessarily. But I would assume that at least some of them were.
The only reason I would assume it is because he puts so much stock into Elend in the Final Empire to being his successor. And if he has these other children, you know, Elend is such a rebel and such against Straff.
I think it would...
The problem is Elend is the only legitimate son.
But that would be because he married another noble. I think they have to be illegitimate because they're all with Scott children.
Yeah, that's what
Scott children. They're
I think they're with noble women of lesser houses. Because if they were with Ska women, he is a law-abiding, like, nobleman. He's gonna kill the women for the Ska women.
Right.
Because he's not gonna let give the Inquisitors something to like come after him for.
Well, maybe since they were the Atium miners, maybe the Lord Ruler gave him a bit of freeway. But I could see it, possibility, but I just don't see the nobles being at a low enough area that they would resort to that kind of dirty work, whilst Ska can... That would be an option for them.
I could easily see that.
Yeah.
If you're a low enough house and you can get like one of the women in your household in like within favor with the Ventures, like that's a good thing for you.
Give me a bunch of money and I'll give you, you know, my 3 daughters or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good thing for that household to have that
I don't know.
connection.
I don't know of any solid evidence on this, but I think that's interesting. Maybe someone can poke around the back. I don't know.
Was that it for your recap, Dragon?
I think the last kind of piece that was most interesting was right. He like commands him to like, hey, continue gaining Vin's trust. Right. He's telling him like, gain Vin's trust, make her want to like friends with you, tell you like whether or not they have the ATM, and like try to do that. And just like I guess the other interesting bit about his insanity is just like it's the hardest to ignore the voice of God in not killing his dad, and he has to admit to himself like I don't want to kill him because he's my dad. Like, in a sense, he admits like he still loves him despite his whole like rivalry and all this, pain and stuff like that.
I
So,
thought it was interesting. The opposite of that, he said that it was easier to ignore the voice when he was with Vin for some reason. I thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah,
The voice doesn't tell him to kill Vin.
he just says it's quieter. I think.
Or it's quieter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like
Okay.
I
the
remember
voice.
it saying
I guess that makes sense though.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting, and which is another reason why he wants to spend time. So, and the last I guess interesting was Amaranta. He says he keeps some useful women mixed in, like Amaranta does, like this healing antidote. So I think we should move on to the next chapter, but I leave this as a question just for the listeners to think about, having just read this, is what are the other useful women used for?
somehow I don't want to think
I don't
about that.
want to do either.
We don't. But, I mean, it's like they're not for their bodies, but they're useful for poison curing. Are any of them like allomancers? Are they like secret guards? Are they useful for their knowledge? Does he have multiple people that cure poison?
I
don't
think
know.
they would all be like womanly traits. Like I think Straff is very much a misogynist, and he would not have a guard that's a mistress.
But we did see Amaranta, who was like a master antidote curator, right? Because he smelled birchbane
Amaranta.
and cinnamon.
Right.
I hate his description. She had been quite attractive a decade before, but now she was creeping into her late 20s.
That makes me mad. That makes me so mad. As someone that, and like, I have 2 kids. Like, yeah, women go through a lot for that, and I love her all the more for it. Not just like, people aren't just, it doesn't matter who they are, but just like people and women aren't to be discarded when, I got fat. I gained 80 pounds over the last couple years, so I can't be a friend. I can't be a husband. I can't, work for you anymore. I'm fat now. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. It's just, but that kind of stuff. Yeah, that just pisses me off.
Definitely a good way of villainizing him. I had one thing I wanted to bring up about this chapter, which I thought it was really interesting and kind of cool that Zane admires and wished he could have met Kelsier. And I wanted to know what you guys all thought about that. Like,
I would think that a lot of, like, hearing the legends, I think a lot of Mistborn would, but I think that Zane, being, from what we've seen, so skilled with steel and iron, like, he has a sort of, he believes there's a connection between the two.
a connection between him and Kelsier?
Yeah. Like, we're both Ska Mistborn. We both have powers and steel that not ordinary Mistborn have. We're both insane.
What do you think, Kay?
And I think it's that because Kelsier was able to, in his mind, like, because previously, like, he had asked Vin, like, why do you play their games? Like, Kelsier didn't play their game.
He did his own thing.
He did his own thing. I think is why he admires Kelsier.
Kelsier outplayed them at their own game.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people see what they want to see in Kelsier, and like he's ultimately this amorphous thing, where I think he doesn't even really know from time to time.
If there's nothing else for this chapter, my only other note is that Straff refers to Elend as a boy, which really shows his mindset of, oh, he's just a teenager acting out. I'll get him in line.
Yep.
Anything else for chapter 18? All right, chapter 19.
Okay, so Chapter 19 starts with an epigraph, and it's very short and brief. It's just Quan wishing he had passed on Alendi as an apprentice. So nothing too interesting there, but it does show how the two of them met in the first place. So the beginning of the chapter, Sazed is hauling butt back to Luthadel, discarding metal mines as he goes to kind of keep himself light and quick. Eventually he spots an army in the distance, so he gets out a tin mine and he climbs up a tree to take a look from a safe distance, and lo and behold, the legends we've heard scant tale about since, near the beginning of first book, Koloss. Oh yeah.
You've been very excited.
I have been very excited about Koloss. I think they're some of the coolest things in the Mistborn series. At least in the first era of Mistborn. But I digress. So we get a little bit of background on who and what the Koloss are, and a little bit about how their society works. Which, for those who need a quick reminder, they are humanoid beings that have bluish skin that doesn't quite fit. It's either baggy and loose on them, or as they've grown to larger and larger sizes, kind of stretched taut as though they grow within their skin, and once they exceed the capacity of their skin, it just kind of rips and tears, and they bleed through the little nooks and creases and cracks that break open in the skin.
Sounds like my ex-wife.
Hey-o! Sazed studies them a little bit before he gets a nasty surprise. When using his tin mine, he can see far away, but he can't really see very much what's going on immediately around him, and there's a Koloss patrol standing down at the bottom of the tree that he has climbed, shouting, "Come down! Come down now!" Eventually he is forced to climb down the tree, and the Koloss take them back to their camp, and Sazed makes some more notes about what they do and how they work, and along the way, one Koloss beats another one to death, and the only excuse that he has was, "I hated him." And that's it. That's all you get. I hated him.
That's a good enough reason.
And it's not like he just took out like a sword and stabbed him. No, this Koloss beat the other one to death, barehanded, in a berserker rage, out of nowhere, totally random. Yikes. Koloss are cool. So when they get back to the camp, it kind of looks like the area around the camp has been eaten at by some particularly aggressive goats or something. Like the grass has been eaten down to the roots, and we find out that Koloss just literally eat everything. And for some reason, at the center of this army of Koloss, there's a small human encampment, where inside Sazed is led to met with His Royal Highness Jastes Likal, who has named himself king, and he leads an army of Koloss.
Who, if we remember, was one of Ellen's friends.
Correct.
He's the one who
buddies.
paid to have
Yes.
been followed. Back.
Yes, so we know he's a sneaky, conniving...
Son of a gun.
Yeah. So a little back and forth between Sazed and Jastes, and eventually Sazed says, "You're going to let me go one way or the other. If you let me go and keep my stuff, I'll take a message back to Elend, King Elend, for you." And Jastes basically says, "I don't care if he knows I'm coming or how many there are. I have over 20,000 Koloss. If he's going to work with somebody, he's better off working with me than with Set or with Strath." And Sazed goes, "Huh?"
What?
And then is sent on his merry way to go talk to Elend.
I just love how throughout the entire conversation between Sazed and Jastes, it's just like His Royal Highness, Lord Elend, King Elend. Like
Yeah.
Sazed, like, is respectful no matter where he is.
And he even refers to Jastes as Your Highness and, your lordship or whatever. So
He's a very respectful person. That's just how he is. He will always refer to people by their title.
Well, it's-
like
when you're
even
raised that way and you are expected to live that way, you know, Sazed's one little kind of like push against that was when Jastes tries to basically hire Sazed to be a steward. He's like, "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I serve no man."
I loved that.
So
When Sazed was just
right, it was like, "Yeah, Sazed, you go, yeah."
actually, I'm not your B word, I think.
My only note for the main section is the coin pouch things that the Koloss have. And that's something Sazed has never seen before.
Right. I didn't have that in my notes, and I couldn't remember if that was from this chapter or if that was from later, so I didn't mention it.
He says they look like coin pouches, but how could they be? Because no one's ever recorded any economy.
Yeah.
So it's like, are they coin pouches? Are they filled with marbles? Small, but it's definitely the type of like it is. He does describe it as like it looks like our coin pouch.
Yeah.
Could be anything in there.
Toenail clippings.
Readers,
A bunch of large.
write in with your suggestions, your predictions, comments.
What
do
you
you
would
think
put in
is
your
in those
Koloss
pouches?
What would you
pouch.
put in them?
What would you put in a Koloss pouch on top of your sword?
Spears.
Maybe they're filled with heads.
wrong series.
Full set of really harpers running around with giant swords.
Anything other note-wise? I've got one more, but I'm saving it for the end.
I have one tiny little thing for the spoiler section from this chapter, but that's about it.
Okay. Anything until then?
I just thought it
Welcome, Koloss,
Yeah.
our evil blue overlords.
was good to finally see the Koloss, right?
The Koloss
Yeah,
are cool.
We've only waited a book
Get
and a
them
half.
on screen, on page.
And we now see why, like, the Lord Ruler did not want these things in Luthadel.
Right.
Did not want these things anywhere near civilization.
Accurate.
Which, considering how little he cared for the people, like, that's a testament for these things are that destructive.
Also, we find out they breed really quickly because they die a lot because they kill each other a lot.
Yes, and nobody quite knows how that works.
And I thought it was crazy that like they grow basically until their hearts can't support the size of their bodies anymore.
Because things that get too big can no longer support. That's why, like, Godzilla has, like, 2 brains and, like, 8 hearts or something.
That's cool to think about.
Okay. Are we ready for chapter 20?
I got one more note. It has to do with the epigraph where we learned about how Alendi Kawag was Kwan's assistant. It really reminded me of, I don't know if you guys ever watched it, but Transformers Prime. We learned that Optimus used to be this clerk, basically, for the Icon Hall of Records, and it reminded me of that. How, even though this is the hero figure, they come from, like, study and all that.
Never seen it, but sounds
I
cool.
just thought
That's
it was
another
cool.
job at a patent office.
The modern day revision.
Okay. So, chapter 20. So, this chapter starts off with Vin's point of view. And the crew is having a meeting to talk about what is going on with Elend and his father. So Elend has agreed to go meet Straff in his camp. The rest of the crew is kind of trying to discourage him from it, but he's actually sticking to his guns, and he's doing a good job he's doing a much better job about being like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do this. And like that's it. So
He's finally learning to assert himself.
he is finally learning to assert himself. And Vin is like, okay, I guess you're learning things. You're changing. Interesting. She's not quite sure what to think of it exactly right now. The changes that she's starting to see in Elend. And so Elend also decides that he's going to bring Vin with him to go meet his father. To go bring the girl home with him. And, a bodyguard. It's useful to have a Mistborn bodyguard when going into a camp unprotected. An enemy
Wasn't
camp.
it Hammond who commented how you're bringing the girlfriend home to see the father?
Yeah. and Breeze is like, especially when that girl happens to be the most dangerous Allomancer in the Central Dominance.
That's the thing, is like, it's at the end of the day, these people, no matter what the crazy relationship is, like, he's the king of Luthadel, he's the heir to this thing, it's always still just like, that's my dad. And I gotta bring my girlfriend over there.
Yeah, and during this, Vin is also, she's very self-conscious. She's kind of thinking, like, she's like, does he really, like, how does he really feel about, like, me being such a powerful Allomancer? Does he actually, like, do I hurt his pride? Like, do I make him feel bad about it? But she kind of, like, lets go. She's like, not right now. And we also learned that Elend has not really been paying very much attention to the assembly. He's kind of been ignoring them and just kind of shoving them off onto Dachshund. And the assembly's getting kind of annoyed about it. But it is what it is. We also see Finn use Allomancy, use bronze, and use Duralumin with bronze to hear allomantic pulses, and she's able to tell exactly using bronze. She's able to tell with Duralumin, she's able to tell exactly what emotions Breeze at the time is soothing on Elend.
That is amazing.
And he's soothing away Elend's anxiety, his fear, his worry, to try to make him more confident. And we kind of see that Breeze is actually kind of like, he's doing some good things, even though he's like trying to put on a show of like not being
Yeah, that was such
very
a
nice.
sweet moment. And I love that, like, she uses the Duralumin, and she at first thinks that those emotions are what he's riding, and then she realizes that he's a soother, and he's actually getting rid of the anxiety, getting rid of the fear, like, while he's pretending to argue with him, like he's masquerading as if he doesn't believe in him while propping him up. It's awesome.
And then at the end of this chapter, so Elend sends everyone away except for Tyndall, and he's talking to Tyndall, and he's like, I did a good job, and she's like, you're still not doing great. She's like, these are all the things that you're still doing wrong. And he's like, listen, I'm doing better. And she's like, not good enough. Sorry.
She's like that professor that's just never satisfied.
All I want is a head pat.
Yeah.
Notice me, senpai.
But, and during this, as well, she ends up pointing out that, like, he needs to get his friends to start calling him by his title. And he kind of turns this around on her and is like, well, you don't call me by my title. You should also be calling me by my title then. And she's like, good. Taught you something.
That's a cool scene, but I don't remember a time when she calls him Elend. She refers to him as like the full Elend Venture when they meet. But she like never just calls him Ellen.
No, she does. She calls him Ellen Venture.
Yeah, but like Ellen Venture is different from just Ellen.
But it's the fact that she's not referring to him as his title. That she refers to him as Ellen Venture instead of as Your Majesty.
I also think it's interesting,
So,
like, in this book, they're constantly comparing themselves to Kelsier and his legacy, and how, like, when his friends used to call him Kel, it was a sign of endearment, and it was because they trusted each other and they were on that friendly level. But Elend has to find his strength through his position and his authority. So them calling him El, I think, is like a clear reference to them referring to Kelsier as Kel, and it just shows like the difference and what his strengths are and how he's the leader that Kelsier could never be, which is great for Elend because this whole time he's been worried that he wasn't living up to the survivor's reputation.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so continuing on, Tyndall asks Elend why he hasn't married Vin yet. Point blank. She's like, why haven't you married her? And he's like, he's such a like, well, I want to. She just won't marry me. And then Tyndall very briefly insinuates that maybe Vin isn't the right person for him and that he needs someone who is more courtly, and he immediately goes off on her and is like, no, you're not going to talk bad about Vin. You're not going to do that. Not in front of me. I won't have it. You'll be thrown out of this room so fast if you talk bad about her. And she's like, oh, she was a little taken up, like, surprised by it because she's continually been, like, being rude to him, like, being mean to him, like, saying so many, like, bad things to his face about himself, and he has not once gotten angry about it and defended himself. But the second that she says something bad, like she like says something slightly bad about Vin, he's like, no, not gonna happen. She's like, okay, you do love her, so I'll let it be.
She's like, that's the king we
Dang right
need.
he does.
She's like, okay, so you do love her, I'll let that be.
I just wish we had seen this from maybe Vin's perspective outside, where she's like listening with Tin, and she could hear that.
But she's not listening because she knows that Ellen doesn't want her to be there during his meetings with Tyndall.
But we've seen her worry about what Ellen thinks of her, and would she be better as like a noble? And it's just like, this shows he loves her. Oh.
It would be nice if she could, like, see that moment. Because she is worried about whether or not he actually, like, loves her.
It would solve a lot of their issues towards each other, a lot of their kind of dodgy trust issues. That's
yes, it would.
Yeah.
But, oh well. And so the chapter ends with a messenger, I think, coming in and telling them that they have that there is someone from Set's army here in the palace. And it is Set's daughter.
What?
And she has come for Breeze.
This part's great. I absolutely love this part.
I love this next chapter. It's
I was gonna say, we're gonna interrupt the dark grittiness of the Well of Ascension for one of the funniest chapters in the whole trilogy.
And I'm kind of sad that he snagged it before I could, because I love this character. I love Set's daughter. She's so funny. She's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah. I really like this upcoming chapter, but as for your chapter, I just wish Vin could have seen how much Ellen thinks of her and what he thinks of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a lot of their problem is that both of them like think so highly of the other one,
It is frustrating. My
think that they don't deserve it. They don't deserve the other person's love.
Yeah, I was gonna say my dad was reading through this book for the first time, and even he pulled out. It's like, God, it's just so frustrating to hear Ellen talk about like, oh, mine good enough for Vin, and the whole time Vin's thinking the exact same thing, but kind of for opposite reasons about each other.
Right. But I mean, let's honestly think about it. This is reality for a good couple. If both people are like, I think I should say a good couple that have self doubt, right? This is what a lot of people in real life just have major like self-image, self-assurance, self-doubt issues. Like where you see the other person also at the same time though so highly of you want to be with them, and you're like, man, like if only I was better. Like they take it a bit too far. Where it's like, it's like, oh, you're struggling because you don't feel like even right for them. So you're like, I just want to totally leave or whatever, and some of that ideality. But I think there's an aspect of finding a right partner is finding someone that you look up to, think is just really amazing, and you want to be with them, and like that they make you better, and at the same time the other person thinks the exact same thing, so you both grow simultaneously in an aspect. So anyway, I just think that's something that you don't generally get to see because we never see more than just what our own thoughts are
Yeah.
So I mention this because I've gone through this, and when your partner or whomever it may be like expresses the fact that it's like they're just so grateful, and like how am I so lucky to be with you, but it's like they're willing to express it, whereas Vin and Ellen you just wish would express it out loud, but you can see their thoughts in it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a thing that a lot of people in partnerships recognize.
Anything else for chapter 20? Swiggity, your note. I do want you to read that one.
I had a couple in there.
The very first one.
So in the Discord, in the podcast notes channel for chapter 20, I had a couple notes. But the first one just said, Ellen is not a weenie? Because in this chapter, as Kay, described, he is living up to Tindwell's teaching, and he's chasing his policies, and he's interacting with the crew the way he should be. But then the next line says,
Right.
Dad, can my girlfriend come over?
Right there. There it is. Can I bring my girlfriend over for dinner?
Which I just thought was funny.
I will hurt you.
Also,
he's getting better. He's getting there.
Uh-huh.
I really want to see it.
Just
He's
watch
making
your
great
back
strides.
at DragonCon.
For a weenie, he's doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see a chapter with him learning how to use the dueling cane, too. I feel like we don't get that.
No,
Yeah.
I don't believe so. But it would have been cool, but it would pretty much just be Brandon describing the art style of dueling canes.
I thought you were going to say Ellen getting his butt kicked.
Oh, also that, but you would have Ellen describe the way they move. It's almost as if, yada yada, they never actually do this. We get enough of that in Starlit Archive.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to interrupt the Well of Ascension. We're going to bring you a sitcom episode. So starting off, we've got more of that, the hero Alendi being a cliche. We knew that he was a blacksmith, but now we know he married the princess. Okay, I've got quite a bit, so I'm going to try to speed run. Set's daughter, Allrianne, is dressed like a princess and attacks Breeze. in quotes. There's a little bit of confusing as she's 18 and Breeze is not. Ham and Ellen can't believe it as Breeze blushes and asks her to introduce herself. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I was going to say, people in the anime community call that glomping, what she did.
When she just runs forward and tackles,
Like,
hugs him.
Throw yourself on someone.
He then introduces her, and she reveals that she snuck her way to see here to see Breezy. Allrianne complains about how horrible the trip was until Breeze showed up, and Breeze avoids Ham's questions on why he left so quickly, because ... Ham asked eagerly. She begs for asylum, which Ellen hesitantly gives for a bit. Allrianne thanks him and hugs Breeze and leaves. Ham and Ellen then just break out in hysteria and laughter. Breeze huffs, remarking that this will make negotiations harder, but Ham and Ellen just aren't even thinking about that right now. Vin enters, asking what the heck the pink thing she just passed was. Ellen explains who she is and that she and Breeze are an item. Vin says that he's old and she's like 12. Breeze gets defensive and comments how Vin crushed on Kelsier. Ellen reacts to that. She calls Breeze a sick man, and she says she only saw Kelsier as a father figure. So there you go, community. She only sees Kelsier as a father figure. Ellen tells everyone to be quiet, and they do, before asking what's next. That's a West Wing reference. They talk on whether or not she is a hostage, but Ellen declares her to be their permanent guest, remembering Tindwill's comment about accepting consequences.
I feel like this is just the perfect introduction to Allrianne. To Allrianne's set. She's got so much energy. She comes in like a whirlwind and then leaves.
I could not stop laughing as I read this chapter.
And it's just perfect. It's just so funny.
Mm-hmm.
It is hilarious. I picturing Ham when he sees the prediction that he made coming true
Yeah.
is just amazing.
Yes.
It's so hilarious.
And the fact that she's like, "Oh, we talked and we did things together," and Ham is like, "Yes,
You did things?
like what?"
What?
I love the Breeze is basically like
And you could just feel
things that
Oh,
could have been
man.
misconstrued, that were misconstrued.
Yes, it was a misconstruction.
you could just see him glaring at Breeze with like the biggest grin on his face.
Oh man.
I love this chapter. It's very much like the time where we have Wuzzing is as Wuzzing does. This
Yeah.
was a nice little break. But that does that happened right at before pretty much all the endgame stuff happened. This one's happening in the middle of part 2.
Yeah, I'll take as many of these
Uh-oh.
chapters as Brandon wants to throw in there. I love this stuff.
I will take as many of these.
Right. These are the chapters that always just makes me, like, I just love it. And we've talked about it last time. It's just like it's just like that camaraderie. Sitting, you're chatting, you're laughing, you're making fun of people, and it's something that like everyone has either felt or wants. And if you have felt it, you want it more. So it's like, I love it.
It's very humanizing, and it's also really important placement of this chapter, because it's like, okay, we've got 2 armies. Oh great, now we've got an army of giant blue ogre death things. What are we gonna do? This is super heavy. Okay, we need to lighten the mood. Like,
And then a
this is
pink
story.
fuzzball.
Right? Like, it's just the comedic timing is gold. The timing of the story is critical to setting the pace and the mood of everything. Like this chapter was just A+.
Yeah. I will say, I want to comment a little bit on the age thing. Like, I think I said at some point in the past of the Final Empire in the spoiler section, I commented on her being 12. She's not 12, that's just what Vin thinks of her. She is 18, but that's even being generous because that's modern age of consent, and this is comparing to medieval times. How old is Breeze? Do we know that?
I was just looking that up. So
I believe he's in his 30s.
He's in his 30s. Yeah.
So it's not too bad.
But that just makes it all the more
Yeah.
scandalous. You know, that's why.
So he does claim that Allrianne, he says at one point that Allrianne is half his age. So
that
18
would
times 2 is 36.
34.
36.
36. Oh my gosh.
Square root of 6 is 6. Or 30.
I did 16 times 2, and then I just thought, yeah, I'll add 2. That's math.
That's math.
16 because it's the
The age
Cosmere
is
number.
18. 2. Plus 2. That's
But-
how you.
Okay. I'm not.
Well, and if you really want to get nitty gritty, we could find out what the how a Scadrian year compares to an Earth year.
I think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio.
I think it is.
I think Scadrial was supposed to be the 1-to-1, but I'm not 100% sure.
Scadrial is 1-to-1. ReRead is 1.5 to 1. I don't remember what the others
I'm
are.
probably going to cut this
But-
next thing out. But I was going to say, I thought you were going to say,
Sorry.
if we're really going to get nitty gritty, we need to find out what the age of consent is on Scadrial.
No, we can keep that in because it's pretty much it's medieval times, not the company, but it's the time
no,
period
it's
with.
it's not medieval. It's pre-industrial because they have things like canneries and factories and foundries. It's not medieval.
True.
It's a strange blend, though,
I-
because I don't know. You don't get the sense that it's pre-industrial. It
It's-
feels medieval.
It's
It's
everything.
partially because the Lord Ruler suppressed a lot of things.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
way technology advanced was skewed by the way the Lord Ruler kind of guided society.
We'll continue. If you want to learn more about the ages
About
of
that,
technology,
Stick around for the spoiler section.
yeah, we'll discuss that further in the spoiler section. But I will say it feels very medieval, so I'm gonna say like age of consent wasn't really a thing back then. But I do like that Brandon makes her 18, and it's not like Breeze. As we see, it's not like Breeze was like leeching over the girl. Or
No,
something. Not
it's
like
very-
Strath.
It's very clear that she is the one who is jumping on him.
Which is hilarious.
It's just, it's the kind of thing that, like, as huge fans of these books, we're reading these again in 2023, and we're like, you know, we love how Brandon has aged as an author. And this one little thing, like if you take it out of context,
Yeah.
is a little bit weird and people could blow it up, and it could be one of those things that's like, oh, it's creepy that Mistborn 2, this 36-year-old is dating an 18-year-old. And you know what?
But I mean, also
It is
in
what
the
it is.
first book, Vin is 16 and Ellen is 21.
She was 16, he was 21. Because we know that she had a birthday in the Final Empire, and we know
I
it's
know,
been a
but-
year,
but-
so she's 18, he's 20. Thought he
No,
was 25.
she's 18 now. And I think he's 23. That's correct.
It's not really that big, but yeah,
But-
this is in the Cosmere community. This is like that's a little bit creepy. But looking back, and if you actually take the time to look at it, Brandon does make it not creepy. Like she's not literal child.
They were like made for each other.
Yeah.
Should we get into 22?
Okay. 22. Final.
Okay.
Chapter.
I have a really short summary for this because I feel like not that much happens. So it's a Vin POV, and it starts out, she no longer feels safe in the mist because of the mist spirit and a little bit of Zane. She sees Ham, and she decides to surprise him to see if he'll burn pewter and find out if he's the conjurer. So she does this in a cool way by having OreSeur howl at the moon. And it works. He burns pewter, and Vin is relieved that Ham is not the conjurer spy. So she goes to talk to him, and they're talking about how if she has to fight another Mistborn, she's going to have to fight someone with Atium, because they wouldn't send a Mistborn without Atium to fight the person who killed the Lord Ruler. So she asks Ham, how would you defeat someone burning Atium if you didn't have it? And he says you'd have to surprise them, or you'd have to trap them in something that no matter what they did, they couldn't get out of it. Then pretty sure like I can't remember like what happens exactly next, but I know she gets to talking with OreSeur. And they get on the subject of like why they've been kind of antagonistic towards each other. And at first she says like, oh, I don't hate you. And he's like, well, there is something there. You have to tell me. And she confesses that she eventually figured out that he was the only one who knew Kelsier was planning on dying, and he didn't say anything to the crew. And they talk about how even though that meant so much to Vin, to a conjurer, that was just another contract to fulfill. And Vin kind of says, well, it was Kelsier, you know, he's not just another master. OreSeur says, was he though? So they have a long conversation, and OreSeur eventually talks about how like being a conjurer is not cool. In some ways, like they're completely bound to this contract, and they're basically slaves to it, and they can't die. So when a conjurer gets punished, they can basically get beaten to death and then revived.
The bodies can be beaten till broken.
Yeah, I think he says you can beat your slave to death in the morning and he'll serve you dinner by night.
Yeah.
That's the exact phrase he used.
So while OreSeur's talking about that, Vin kind of shares that sensibility of being oppressed and being beaten down, and they kind of bond a little bit when she starts talking about how like she understands what it's like to just want to hide, and how she at a time in her life would have loved to just become a dog like he is now and be anonymous. And he says that the Kandra tried that. Like in the past, they tried to just hide among society, and they used Mistborn to hunt them down. Something about the Mistborn, they can either track them down or they're effective against Kandra. It's not really explained, but Vin makes a mental note of it. And while they're talking, they see a figure, and it's not an Allomancer.
The Kandra.
Oh, that's right. That's a good detail. Is OreSeur notices and warns Vin, which is cool because that's not something he would have done before. And they're kind of sketched out by who it is, but we know because we've read it's Sazed.
Yeah.
He's come to Luthadel at last, after using all his stored speed.
And she hugs him.
Yep.
She hugs him.
That's a good.
There are far stranger hugs in the Cosmere, okay? Like,
Yeah, but this is Vin.
I get it.
It's significant because it's like Vin. It's showing how much she's grown since the first book, where she like didn't want to touch anyone, like she didn't want to be near anyone. She would never given someone a hug at the beginning of book 1.
And we see that she's very touchy with Elend, but this is, you know, kind of like a best friend thing. This is a friend, and she does want that contact.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, like she would slink away from any kind of physical contact, and for her to be the one approaching Sazed and hugging him. But it's Sazed. Like, I want to give Sazed a hug. In real life.
Don't we all?
He's just like the best friend that everyone wants. Super non-judgy.
But I love how he also has like sarcasm too. You know.
So going through my notes, they talk about how they don't really have any Allomancers anymore. What happened to all their Allomancers? Because we know they had not a lot, but a fairly good amount when they were trying to overthrow the Lord Ruler. Like they had Tin Eyes and Seekers and Smokers. Maybe not Seekers, but they had Tin Eyes and Smokers.
So they had 10 Eyes, they had Smokers, and then they had people under Breeze. And I bet that they probably do still have them, I would suspect.
You know what?
But I mean, when you in regards to running a kingdom,
Yeah, those aren't the most.
You know what I think happened is
six people that can manipulate emotional allomancy, maybe like 5 Smokers.
I think that like they never got paid. They never got paid. Like in the Final Empire, the whole
That's true.
thing was that they were going to pay them the Atium at the end.
They don't have like a big like coin shots, lurchers, Hamren, some stuff. So he probably has maybe a handful of like thugs, maybe. But he like ran security, but he potentially was the only thug running security, and they probably just joined the army. So
Yeah, they don't have a lot of offensive people. They don't have, I'm guessing, I don't think they have a lot of coin shots or lurchers, if any. That, like, I don't know if they ever specifically mention any. And we don't have very many thugs either, which are mostly the offensive Allomancers. The other Allomancers are useful when doing like manipulating crowds and things like people.
Reconnaissance.
And reconnaissance, but it's not really useful.
Mm-hmm. And then my only other note is that Finn hears the thumping again. The strange pulsations.
It's the thump thump.
Is there anything else we would like to cover from this chapter or this whole part as a whole? We got some very serious notes. We've got a really funny chapter, and then we get Vin comparing herself to a Kandra.
Very sad chapter. But also kind of nice because they're connecting.
I would say these are like some of the coolest chapters we've had so far. Like, even though we didn't get any cool fight scenes or anything, we got to pal around with the gang. We got to meet Koloss for the first time. Sazed's back in town, so that makes me really excited for the next group of chapters for him to catch up with everybody. And yeah, it was just a good group of chapters, and I think these are the kinds of things that are better on a reread. Maybe when you're going through this the first time, it's like, nothing happened in this chapter. We just met Breeze's apparent girlfriend. But like going back through, like, this chapter was awesome. We got to meet Allrianne, and everybody was giving each other crap.
John and Dragon, anything from you?
no,
Not really.
Okay, then. Well, thank you so much for sticking around so far into this episode. We're going to go into the spoilers section, and we highly recommend that if you have not read this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere, you stop here because it's very likely we will talk about everything and anything. However, if you are up to date on this story, feel free to stick around. It's likely we will bring up details you may have forgotten or plot threads that are yet still to come. Please be sure to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, or whatever it is on this video or audio, and don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. We would love to hear from you. But this is where we leave you. And my name is ReaderWarrior, and I have been joined by DragonKeiran,
See y'all later.
Swiggity Swoo,
There's birchbane in this cinnamon.
John,
Come down now!
and Kay.
Have a good night, y'all.
And this has been Cosmere Connections. And we're back. Dragon had to leave us because he has a prior engagement. He was only able to stick around so far. So I'm going to take over chapter 18. Is there anything else we would like to cover overall before we get into that?
Ellen isn't a weenie.
I just wanted to jump back into that the conversation that we were having before about the timelines. That we were gonna put off for a little
What
bit
was this?
about like what kind of it was the age of consent conversation where it's like what era does it take place in?
Yeah.
We kind of stopped in the middle of
Yeah,
it. So
I remember.
Because we moved into spoiler section territory.
yeah. On accident.
Mhm.
But the Lord Ruler it's kind of a weird mix between like medieval pre-industrial era stuff because the Lord Ruler had a very heavy hand in suppressing certain technologies. For example, they knew about gunpowder before the Lord Ruler became the Lord Ruler, but he suppressed the knowledge of it so that because guns are much easier for common people to wield than bows and arrows.
And he
Or
wanted very
swords.
much to have a unified humanity to
Mhm.
bulk
Yeah.
up their storage for protection or preservation against ruins, whatever. When I'm pretty sure there's a word of Brandon out there about someone who asked directly, and he said, in an Earth timeline, they would be in the industrial age, but because of the Lord Ruler suppressing certain technologies, it doesn't look like it because things that we would expect to see, like gunpowder, have been kind of expunged from human knowledge.
Or the light bulb.
So that's why when you
But yeah.
see
Or the light
like
bulb.
illustrations of Luthadel, it almost looks like Victorian.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And why they have things like canneries, like
And
But-
metalsmithing.
yeah.
Let's get on track with the main chapters, because Kay, you do have to leave fairly soon. Chapter 18, God is Ruined. I think that one's fairly obvious.
Yeah.
Why
Kill
is
it.
Ruin? Why is he like that?
He's just sending out. He's not actually paying attention to Zane.
So he's doing this just to this will mess with him.
He's
No,
just.
death is ruination, right? Like, it is that sort of natural breakdown of what is alive, right? So, kill him is like, end him, ruin him, break him down into his constituent components. Like, that's what
Yeah.
Ruin does.
And Zane is like super
It's his intent, you might
super
say.
spiked too, right?
No, he's only got one.
Oh, one big one.
He's just got the iron one in his back.
He's
I
just
think.
got.
But that's
Is it in his back, in his
Okay.
chest, something like that?
It's in his back because he can't put on the cloak.
but that's why he's like
But I thought it was like. I don't know.
Yeah.
that's why he's always tuned into Ruin FM.
and Ruin isn't trying to be subtle with Zane because he doesn't care that Zane is hearing a voice in his head.
That's so...
Because I think Zane was already kind of crazy before the spike.
Insane in the
So-
membrane. That
so-
joke's never gonna get old.
So he doesn't really care that Zane knows that he's hearing or thinks that he's hearing God's voice. He doesn't really care about that. And that's why it's just the general kill him whenever he sees someone. It's just kill him because it's not Ruin's actual attention on Zane. It's just Ruin's general
Yeah.
He's not important. He's wearing a red shirt.
Yeah. Nice.
So Reader?
Ouch.
Oh.
I'll accept that though. I'll accept that because that means in the next gen I get to be captain.
Is that Mistborn Era 2?
I guess.
Great. So we're going to be comparing Mistborn with Star Trek as we go
So
along.
why does he not get the kill him around Vin?
Because Ruin doesn't want him to kill Vin.
Because Vin
Right.
Because Vin
needs
is
to release the power.
important.
Whereas Zane
Yeah.
is kind of a ruined sledgehammer, Vin is kind of a ruined needle. Very targeted, very pinpoint, very precise.
I love the way you put that.
In fact,
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
there's a point when Zane thinks she's like me, and I think he's referring to not just the fact that they're both Mistborn and Ska, but also she's spiked as well.
You keep saying that you think that Zane is Ska, and I don't think he is. I don't think any of Straff's mistresses would be Ska.
I don't know.
I do
Because
not
we
think
see
that
him later. He gets a Ska mistress to join when he, Ellen, and Vin are having supper.
we don't know that that's a Ska woman. It's a
Touche.
woman who looks similar to Vin, but we don't know that that's a Ska woman.
I thought they referred to her as a Ska. But you're right. I don't think the girl says, "Oh, I'm Ska," or Straff says.
Yeah, I
she's
don't
Ska.
remember well enough. Well, we'll have to come back to it when we get to that chapter.
Yep.
Like next week.
Is that next
But
week?
It might be.
Oh, I
Well,
can't wait.
and it might be different now that the Lord Ruler is dead, that he would
That's
be
also
willing
possible.
to
That's a
take
good point.
Ska women now as mistresses, but I don't think he would have had a Ska mistress for a long enough time that she could bear a child. I
See,
think
I disagree. I think Straff is the kind of person that does what Straff wants. And
Yeah.
That's just, as far as he cares, that's the end of it. I feel like that's the kind of arrogant that he is.
I agree, but I think that he still wouldn't want the Inquisitors to have the Steel Inquisitors to have a reason to come after him.
That's true.
Absolutely. Nobody would want to have that happen, but I don't think he's beyond keeping that secret, or
I think he's
cleaning up
definitely
the mess
prideful.
once the kid is old enough to have snapped or not snapped. I would not put it past him to just off a 15-year-old who was, beaten within an inch of their lives and didn't develop powers. Okay, finish
Or
him
like,
off.
what if he got the girl pregnant, and I'm saying girl because it's highly like, and then she gave birth, and then he kills her, and he can just claim, oh yeah, she never gave birth. I used her set amount of time, and then I killed her, and then he just takes the baby to his secret training facility. Yeah. Thoughts I don't really want to think about. And my only other comment of this chapter is when Straff is saying make a general poison because it's, what was the poison, like
Birchbane
or something?
Birchbane.
Birchbane. I'm giving myself credit for birch, but he also says something else. That's just Straff's general addiction to the tea, right?
He just is like, he's not sure if there's something else in there because he's like, I wouldn't put it past Zane to slip something else in the tea underneath the birchbane.
And then he drinks it anyways.
Yeah, it's like
This guy
That's a
is
good display of
this
power.
guy is nuts. Okay, this is like
Mhm.
if DJ Khaled was like a medieval emperor, it would be Straff Venture. He would be doing all these same things. I swear to God. Like, I don't know.
I don't like Straff, but that was a cool scene.
Oh yeah, when he just takes it anyways.
You know, this poison will never work.
alright, let's keep moving on. Let's keep
Yeah.
moving.
So, chapter 19. This is the Koloss chapter.
Yeah. So the one tiny little thing I have for this chapter is we know from Words of Brandon that red is an indicator of corruption in investiture, and that Koloss are inherently invested creatures, and they have red eyes, kind of like the Kandra start developing later on. So what's the corruption, if any?
I
Is
think
there
it's
a corruption?
hemalurgy. Hemalurgy.
Hemalurgy?
Well, hemalurgy is inherently of ruin, so is there some modicum of preservation in there that's corrupting the ruin? Or
I think with the Koloss, it's the fact they keep doing the spikes over and over. Like, we
It could
know
be.
that
it
the
could
Lord
also just
Ruler-
be that they need some Visine, and, you know.
Wouldn't it be?
we know that when a Koloss died, they gave their spikes back to the Lord Ruler, and he would destroy them, and then he would give them a new spike. That's how they would make a new child. Now they're reusing them, and that's where a bit of their intelligence is. It's likely that the red eye thing probably comes from the fact like they've done this so many times with so many people that latent investiture is getting punctured as well.
Oh, they're corrupting like the human
Yeah.
Yes.
when they spike them.
As for the Kandra in like Tress, maybe it's a
Or
time
no.
thing. Yeah.
It also might just be Ulam is weird and
That's
just
true.
wants to have red eyes.
I would.
I liked
Wasn't there something in the Lost Metal about the Kandra?
There is the
Getting
Kandra at
weird.
the end, in which we don't really know if it's a Kandra, but they said they have immortal, faceless immortals themselves, and that one has red eyes. But also remember that red is ambition's color. That's not going to be confusing.
it's kind of cool how when OreSeur is talking about Tensoon is talking about the contract and how oppressive it is, it just like hits so much harder when you learn in Tress that Says it eventually freed all the Kandra.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But my only other note about the Koloss is why do their bodies keep growing? Like, what is the magical reason? Like, the bodies are dead.
Autonomy.
But they're not. They're not dead, though. They're alive.
My
And
answer
is
is
it just them
hemalurgy
being...
is really complicated and it's hard to make anything with it.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not
Is it just the
wrong.
fact that more nutrients the body keeps on growing? Because, like, we as people, like, we keep getting nutrients, but we don't grow. So why does the kind of dead body continue to get nutrients and continue to grow?
Because
Yeah.
you're basically like just plugging in like power to this.
Kandra get, or not Kandra, Koloss get 4 spikes, right?
Yes.
5.
5?
5?
I thought it was 5.
I remember 4, but I
Might
don't...
be. No,
Like, are the Koloss just like Frankenstein monsters? In a
Pretty
way?
much. I was relating more to Hulk, but yeah. Okay, we'll wait for Kay to get the answer, and then we'll move on to chapter 20.
so it is 4. So
Yeah. And they're
to
all iron.
create a Koloss, 4 humans are stabbed with individual iron spikes through their hearts, and these spikes are then placed strategically onto a 5th person. Once placed, the spikes turn the recipient into a Koloss very quickly.
Okay. Okay, let's move on.
That's why.
Unless John found something.
Yeah. So the spikes contain strength and a portion of the spirit web of 4 other people, causing them to grow in strength far beyond human limits, as well as making it possible for them to continue growing in size until they can no longer physically support their own bodies. So that's literally stealing strength from a person and stabbing it into another person, which is what, so they grow in the same way a ferrochemist would when they increase their strength.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah. Chapter 20. Nobody brought it up, but the thing talked about world bringers in the epigraph.
Oh yeah.
I have a theory. This is a hot take. I think, does it ever really say what the time period is like for pre-Ascension classical Scadrian? I think they are at space age by then. I think Alendi could have been a blacksmith, and we only really know that, you had the ferrochemists, terrorists that were kind of like nomads.
And so when you think,
But I think,
when the Lord Ruler ascended, he reset all of the technology.
well, he moved the planet, he destroyed everything he didn't really want. But I think when we get to space age, we're going to see that there were previous space age explorers. These were the classic Scadrians. And maybe we'll find out about Lutha with that. And I think Worldbringer could be a literal term.
Oh my god.
That is some tinfoil hat
find-
shit right there.
Yeah, I find that very hard to believe.
I'm just
because
getting
of
it
the
out there.
fact.
It's not impossible though, because they do space travel with magic.
Right.
But
I'm just saying, look at
It's-
all the information we have on classical. We don't really know squat.
I think it's more likely that they would have known of other worlds through the cognitive realm than through space travel.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
but I do want to say, I'm just
It's a
putting
fun
it in
thought
record.
experiment.
What if they had achieved spacecraft?
I mean,
And what if this whole talk about ruling kingdoms is only just in the mindset of how we think of it is because we aren't thinking of it in a futuristic sense?
well, there was probably world hoppers back then, no matter what, right?
Yes, because we know Hoyd. It's possible that Hoyd founded. We know that Hoyd was a world bringer, and that it's likely he founded the World Singers. But I just wanted to get that theory out there while we brought up world bringers, because there's not really much else in this chapter to talk about.
Were there world hoppers before the Shattering? Could there have been world hoppers before the Shattering? Because all of the perpendicularities are named for shards.
I don't think there was worlds
true.
before the Shattering. Like,
No, because
No,
we
'cause
know
there was
Aiden
Yolan.
there
Alcier
were, but
made Yolan.
in
I mean, not
there
Yolan.
were worlds.
made
There
Roshar.
were worlds.
but not the ones that we know and love,
Yeah.
right?
Roshar.
Well, Aiden
Roshar
Alcier
was.
made Roshar.
Really?
Roshar is pre-Shattering.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Roshar is old.
Yeah,
The-
for some
the-
reason, Aiden Alcier woke up one day and he's like, you know what? Crabs.
I think the only world that we know for sure is post Shattering is Scadrian.
Right.
And look how that turned
But
out.
I think all of the other worlds were pre-Shattering.
Because I just remember something in the Ars Arcanum
But-
about how, like, a lot of the worlds were created based on this original Yolan model.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Reservation did for Scadrial.
Which Adonalcium might have done.
Yeah.
Might have created Yolan and liked it, and then made a bunch more planets.
Just
Based
pooped
on
out
that
a small
model.
globular cluster.
Yeah, you know, just
I
casually.
mean, the first one's easy.
Anything else for chapter 20? Okay, chapter 21. Nothing much in this one either. I do have the note that Ellen can't believe it as Breeze blushes, and he asks her to introduce herself. But then, after a moment, Breeze introduces her. I think she rioted Breeze to have him introduce her.
Oh, 100%. I think she was writing all of them during that scene.
That makes a
Oh
lot
my
of sense.
God.
I think she was writing all of them during that scene to get them to trust her more.
That's just so
And
funny to imagine, like, her telepathically nudging him, like, go on, introduce me.
Yeah. Like, she definitely rioted Ellen to get him to agree to let her stay. Yeah, I think it's I would be surprised if, like, she wasn't rioting them during that scene, because based on what we know about her later on, like, she is instinctual with her writing as much as Breeze is instinctual with his soothing. Like, it's just who she is. That's just what she does.
Yeah. Which I just wanted to the specific of the fact that Ellen asked her to introduce herself, and then Breeze is like, this is Allrianne Set, daughter of yada yada. She's like, I
Ashweather.
100%, yeah, I 100% can see her like turning her head to Breeze and like puppy dog, and then like rioting him. My only other note for this chapter is the West Wing reference, but that's not really a spoiler.
Okay, your West Wing senses are sharper than mine. What was the West Wing reference? What's next?
It was what's next?
Okay. Yes, that was President Bartlett's catchphrase, but I don't know if that can really be a reference. Like, if he had drank from the keg of glory or something, okay, we have a West Wing reference
Must
here.
bring him all the muffins in the land.
Muffins and bagels.
I feel sorry for Kate Swiggity now.
Yeah, but I am fucking loving it.
What's next is such a vague, like, it's
right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I don't think Ellen even says it. It was just me writing my summary of it. I put it as Ellen says, "What's next?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still fun.
pretty vague.
I was when you said it's a West Wing reference, I went. I love West Wing.
Same. Anything else for this chapter? There's not really any spoiler things here.
No, I had nothing.
Okay, then chapter 22.
Oh, it's funny when... I mean, it's not funny, but Vin is like, Kelsier wasn't just another master. He was Kelsier. You know, workers' rights. And Tensoon, who was not Renew, is basically like, oh, well, maybe he was. I don't remember. Like, because he wasn't there.
I almost have to wonder what would have happened if... Do you think Tensoon would have actually opened up? Or OreSeur? Would OreSeur have actually opened up a bit?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. But then that also, counterpoint, would OreSeur see Kelsier differently from other masters if he had actually known him?
Not even a little bit. I think OreSeur was like the ultimate stick up the butt Kandra with a chip on his shoulder.
And I don't think Tensoon would have seen Kelsier differently as any other master either.
But it is funny that he literally didn't know.
And the fact that he didn't know about Vin's past either.
Yeah.
I hate that. She kind
of just explains it away, and she's like, "Oh, you probably thought that I've been on Kelsier's crew for a while because he came to Luthadel after I was recruited."
I did feel like he opened up to her partly because she admitted that the real reason she was angsty about working with him is because he knew that Kelsier was going to die. And before that, you know, if what she hated about him was that he ate Kelsier's bones, that is just kind of like that hating Kandra for what they are thing. And so at least this way, like now that he knows, oh, it's something that I did or something that I didn't do, rather than just the nature of me as a Kandra. Like that, I think, is part of the reason he opened up to her as well.
My next bullet point is of the unavoidable situation where you lock a Atium user just in a no-win scenario. That's basically what happens in the first couple chapters of Steelheart.
Oh yeah, that's how. Yeah, locks him in a no-win scenario and is able to.
I'm hiding because I didn't read Steelheart.
I read
I
it, but
said
it was
it.
a long time ago, and I don't remember.
I said it, and everybody went quiet, and I'm like, okay, I'm the only one.
It's been a minute since I've read
It's been
Steelheart.
a
I
hot
should
minute.
reread it at
I
some
have
point.
it. I
I
haven't
won't.
read it.
I don't like Steelheart. Okay, I like Steelheart. It just feels like it doesn't feel like Brandon. It feels like a lesser author to me.
It was fun to read, but it wasn't connected to anything, so I didn't pay much attention to it. You know what I mean? Or I didn't like commit it to my book of favorites, if you will.
Yeah, same.
Like, well, this isn't going to be canon in the Cosmere. Like,
Right.
Nah. My only other two notes are they might get into a bit of a conversation. So Rashek let the Kandra melt back into society.
you mean he let them,
It's
or they
just
just did it?
he was. I think so. Their one goal, their one thing, was to keep track of the Atium.
But I'm
That's the only
thinking,
thing that he asked them to do. So they were going to try and just
so
melt
they
into
just thought,
society.
yeah. So do we think that? So Rashek did his whole thing with the world. He put the pits, and he basically told his friends, "Hey, you guys watch over this, but do whatever you want. In which I'll make you brothers and sisters, so you aren't." And he gave them this knowledge, and now that they've got these hundreds of Mistwraiths, which were the other ferochemists that he knew of, um, and he let them just go out, and then something happened. It would be cool if there was an event specifically where somebody saw one like eating a person or their skin turned clear, and then they started getting hunted.
Yeah, I think that that people knew about them and they were being hunted, and then they tried to blend into society to escape being tracked down, but it didn't work.
So I'm thinking it the other way. I think they were let into society, got found out, and then the contra was basically to protect yourself. So you guys got to stay in the band.
Well, you got to think, hey, didn't that guy die? It's like they have to take the bones of something that died. So they're pretty good at impersonating a specific person, but like just blending into society altogether, like every time they have to impersonate a specific person, or like, how does that work? Do they just take somebody's corpse and move across Scadrian?
And how good were they originally? Like, we know they're good after centuries of training and learning. How good were they in the original days?
Yeah, and all it takes is for
And
one or two cases of them being found out before the humans are like, we gotta stop these things.
yeah, we've got these people eating us and impersonating us.
Yeah. Well, and at that point, they didn't have the contract in place that said that they wouldn't eat humans. They wouldn't kill any humans themselves.
That's true.
So.
Oh, do we think that there was so one of the fair chemists got his memories back after being turned to a Mistwraith, got spiked, and then he just because did they not have their memories?
No. The only people who had their memories were his friends.
Okay,
or
but
the first generation.
I'm thinking it would be a cool story idea is if one of them something triggered in their mind and they got like a memory, and so he remembers what the world used to be like, and he just goes crazy.
That would be epic.
Kind of like Bleeder, but like it's an actual crazy.
Yeah, the problem with that is that the Mistwraiths do reproduce and die, I think. At least they do reproduce. Like, there are multiple generations of Mistwraiths since the original ones. And
Just gotta
so,
see if that's on DeviantArt.
I don't know. I just thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah.
Be careful what you
Yeah.
Google. Make sure safe search is on.
And I have this outline in my head of, you know, what would be a cool story is we see the 1,000 years of the Lord Ruler's kingdom, and you see like how he went from, you know, just hating to becoming the God King at some point. Like seeing these different moments in time would be really cool. And like that's why I'm like, okay, so they're all at a party, and then just one of the Kandra comes in and he just starts killing people, and he's after Rashek and wants revenge for what the world was like, and turning all of his friends into monsters, basically. I just thought it would be cool. And then my last note is Vin hears the well. Is there a difference between the pulsation of the well and the pulsation of preservation?
Yes. The pulsation of the well at this point is a lot quieter.
Okay, but there's like, I'm not talking like volume, I'm saying like the beat would the
Yes,
rhythm be
yes.
different?
The rhythm would be different.
Why is that? Because it's preservation's power in preservation. Like, I agree that it should be different, but it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense that it is.
Sure it does, because it can be influenced by the vessel just the same way the vessel is influenced by the power.
Mm.
Ah, so Mistwraiths are able to breed, and they have a lifespan of roughly 50 years.
I was looking into this too,
Sorry.
and so apparently in Hero of Ages we find out that all of the Mistwraiths are turned ferochemists from the past, with the first gens being Rashik's Pac-Man friends. Therefore, there are a set number of Mistwraiths that are created when Rashik converted them all, and every generation a number are brought forward to become full Kandra. So I wouldn't say they can reproduce so much as like they become Kandra by like every generation.
The Kandra can't reproduce, but the Mistwraiths can.
Yes.
Which it says like a Mistwraith is a person caught between spiritual and physical realm.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Right?
What did...
Yeah.
A blockage.
Do we know what... Okay, I know we're jumping back to the question. Do we know what happened with all the Mistwraiths that were on Scadrian when Sazed ascended?
I think they're still there. They're still
Are we?
hanging
Because
out.
there are no
Yeah,
more
they're
Kandra.
still... The Mistwraiths are still hanging out, though. They're just out in the... They're not in the basin. They're out past the roughs.
Okay. I just don't remember anybody talking about Mistwraiths anymore at that point.
I don't remember hearing about Mistwraiths in Era 2, now that you mention it.
But can anybody give me a good reason why the pulsations would be different?
Well, I did. Because the power would be influenced by the vessel in the same way the vessel is influenced by the power.
But it's
maybe
still...
to a lesser extreme.
But it's still the influence power, isn't it? It's just the fact that we're seeing a physical manifestation of preservation versus here's all of his energy juice.
Yeah, but it's like applying a filter to a guitar. Like, you hit that pedal, it changes the sound.
Different pickups.
Okay.
I'm also wondering if the pulsations coming from the well are not actually of preservation, but they're of ruin. They're pulsations that ruin is sending out.
They're
Because
also
we know...
potentially at just a different locality.
I kind of got to side with the ruin thing, though. Because don't we see that Kelsier rides those pulsations? And that's how he sees out in a bit during Secret History?
He follows them to the well, yeah.
No, but like he's stuck in the well and then he like allows his consciousness to ride them. And he sees things that Ruin is noticing. And that's how he kind of stays in the loop of book 2 a bit.
There are pulsations that Ruin sends out of the well that Kelsier is able to ride out, but I don't know if that's the same thing, or if that's like, because it's like him, it's like Ruin reaching out towards specific people.
I kind of like that it's Ruin's note. A bit. I'm sorry, but I kind of like that.
Ruin's note.
Is there anything else, though? Because that's going to be it.
I'm good.
Oh, good timing, too. This cocktail's starting to get to me.
Because of your background thing, it looked like you were holding nothing.
Holding up a
Yeah,
light.
it's a leader stein. It's, yeah.
Almost looked like a high spren.
A Sudspren. Sudspren.
Well, I very much enjoyed a lot of these chapters. They got less and less spoilery as they went on, but I enjoyed the Allrianne chapter. If I had known you wanted it, I wouldn't have called dibs on it.
You're good. It's okay.
But I did want it. I did not have the Sazed chapter this episode.
Oh, that was me.
No. Also, episode 1, I did not have the Sazed chapter. So I am not the Sazed guy.
What do you mean, no? My chapter was a Sazed chapter.
No, I'm saying in episode 1. Like, we were joking these last 2 episodes that I was getting all the Sazed chapters. Episode 1, it was Swiggity, and now you've got it. So I'm clear. I can claim the rest of the Sazed chapters for myself.
That's right, I forgot about that. There's some Sazed chapters coming up.
Do we want to wrap up?
Yep, I was just getting to that. Well, that's going to be it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us in our ramblings and predictions. Please be sure to remember that there's always another connection. Have a nice night.
Take it easy.
I hated him.
Have a good one.
I knew I was heading in the direction of needing a new computer anyway, but I just don't have the extra funds set aside. I was really hoping this would last, be a year or two longer, and I could get my wife her own laptop, and then I could eventually replace this one.
I've been waiting for my tablet to die because I want to buy a updated version of the same one, but it just seems to be immortal. The power pack has died twice, but the tablet itself, it's a Surface Pro 3 or 4. I can't remember. And it's just been absolutely fucking immortal. The thing is a beast. It's amazing.
I remember in the 90s when everything would outlive you. Like, I remember the fridges that would hum. I remember the TVs that are like almost as thick as they are wide.
Reader, you say
like,
I remember the
more
90s.
thicker than they were wide.
Reader, you say I remember the 90s. As if you were like 2.
I was close enough to the 90s. I was close enough.
When he was 2, they used to make things better.
Yeah.
How old are you, Reader?
I'm 22, turning 23 in April.
You're turning 23?
Yeah.
You weren't
So
even.
you weren't
You
even.
never experienced the
You never
90s.
been
I
alive
was a
in the
2000s
90s.
child. I lived in the 1990s.
No.
We caught
You are
this
not in the
last bit of
1990s. In
90s.
2000, you are out.
We caught the last
90s
bit of
ends
the
at
90s.
99. If you don't know
I
how to
have
count your numbers, you
VHS
can
of
go back
Disney
to preschool.
sing-along songs. I lived in the 90s.
You did
No,
not
no.
live during the 90s. So
90s
sorry.
and 1900s do not work the same as saying 20th century. That's the one that refers to the past.
This is the only thing us
We're in the
old people
21st
have.
century. We're in the 2000s.
This is all
You are
we
not-
have.
you are not
Experienced the 90s.
Maybe through siblings or parents.
Let us be old.
I experienced the 90s.
Through photographs, maybe.
The 90s never really went away, to be fair.
I saw this video. My wife sent me this video earlier today. That was like, this person was like, you know what we need? We need like a phone for like the whole house.
Yes, I saw this.
Oh my gosh.
You know, one that's like can just stay there, and in case of emergencies or whatever, everyone just has a phone that they can turn to and use.
Like
And it was like, oh my
landline.
word.
some sort of house phone.
Oh my
I
word.
love
We
the
have
one-
reached the point where people, adults that are working, don't even know that landline phones existed.
And we're done.
All Inquisitors are bad.
Look at that. Look at that great